Welcome to Sports Tonight on a Thursday.
Thursday. Feels like a Friday.
I know, it has that
Wednesday
Friday
felt like
vibe.
Friday.
Right?
You know why, Scott?
I was thinking Wednesday was Thursday yesterday, honestly.
Right. And daughter got out of school yesterday.
Yeah.
School year ended. Today had Friday vibes all over it. And it's Thursday.
At least the school year is over, man. It's been a long school year.
True
man.
indeed.
These are I wish back when I was a kid, I would have gotten out before Memorial Day. That would have been awesome, man.
Yeah, but the problem is she goes back first week of August.
That's true.
But that's not what we're here to talk about.
No, we're here to talk about some. Well, first of all, we're here talking about some basketball,
Yeah.
and of course, I was going to call you our resident basketball expert, but
I don't know if I'd use the word expert.
certainly a resident Boston Celtic expert here. So I've just kind of heard, last few days, right? I mean, it's been a bunch of people talking about no team has ever come back down from an 0-3 deficit. It's never happened before.
Yeah.
When you look at the Celtics, when you look at the Heat, do you think – I have my own opinions on this too – but do you think the Celtics can be the first team to ever come back from an 0-3 deficit?
I do. Of course I do. I thought the Lakers had potential to do it as well. Just because I'm a big believer that at this stage, especially Eastern Conference Finals, you're not dead until the other team wins that fourth game. And a lot of these sweeps happen probably in early rounds or, not the finals necessarily. And I think even the NBA finals can steamroll or snowball a little bit more than this. So I think this is the Celtics, though, in particular, is probably the best setup for a team to come back from down 0-3.
I agree.
That we've ever seen, because the Celtics greatly underperformed in the first three games, and the Heat may have overperformed a little bit at times. And now the Heat, Scott, have an injury issue. And a year ago, if you would have told me that Gabe Vincent missing a game with an ankle injury was going to be a key thing potentially in this series, but he's been unbelievable. Last year it was Kyle Lowry who was more the main guy, and Vincent would give you maybe 12 or 18 minutes a night to spell Lowry. Now it's the other way around, and the Heat already have shooting or point and shooting guard problems with Tyler Herro and Oladipo both being out. So now you take Gabe Vincent out for tonight because of the ankle, and Kyle Lowry is the only true point guard on that team left to play. So the ball's going to be in Jimmy's hands a lot, and it might be in Bam's hands a lot. Sometimes Bam will initiate the offense, and I don't think that's a great thing for the Heat if that's going to be the case, because I do think that this was a game where they were going to try to get the ball to Bam in the paint early on to establish, because when Bam's been good against the Celtics in the last few playoff series over the last several years, he's had good first quarters. So I felt like they were going to try to get him the ball early, get him going, because he did not get going at all in Game 4.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at Game 4, it's just the Celtics, I don't know. They're just one of those teams that seems to be at their best when their back is against the wall. When you look at the 76ers series, they were down 3-2 in that, fought back in a Game 6, and crushed them in the Game 7. So yeah, I mean, it seems like the Celtics, they're just one of those they're just one of those teams that it seems like they have to be against the ropes. They have to lose some rounds for them to come back out and start really fighting. So yeah, I do give the Celtics a fighting chance. And like you said, the dynamic of this, I think, lends itself for them to be the first team to ever come back down from an 0-3 deficit, just for the simple fact, obviously they were one of the best teams the entire season. The Heat was the number 8 seed. They just barely slipped into the playoffs. But I think even more than that, 2 of these next 3 games, if necessary, will be in Boston.
Right.
Now
yeah.
I was going to say that hasn't always been a great thing, because Boston,
not with these two teams.
Right. And last 2 years, I think I heard somewhere the Celtics have a losing record at home the last 2 playoffs here. The last 2
to the Heat they do.
Yeah. So I mean,
so the Heat and the Celtics, like, both teams are very comfortable in the other team's building. So that, if you're a Heat fan, you can't be super happy about that, because that means that Game 6, which, if it happens, if the Celtics win tonight, will feel like a Game 7, and the Celtics went down and won Game 7 in Miami last year in the Eastern Conference Finals. So I think at this point, Scott, what you have is 3 consecutive coin flips. Can 3 consecutive
point.
coin flips come up the same way? Yeah, they can. Does it happen a lot? Not too often. So the Celtics still face an uphill battle here. I think even getting tonight's game, so you could look and say, oh, Gabe Vincent's out, so that's going to be easy for the Celtics. But the Celtics lost when Embiid was out. The Celtics lost when DeJounte Murray was out at home to the Hawks and to the Sixers. So they're the type of team that hasn't performed as well at home as they should. And you mentioned that, they're good when they're desperate. That's been the case, but a lot of parallels being drawn, and I don't want to make it too Boston-centric here, but a lot of parallels being drawn to the Red Sox when they came back against the Yankees.
Here we go.
And the difference is, there's a bunch of differences, but one of the big ones is that Red Sox, those were the idiots, is what they were called. They called themselves that.
The idiots.
They had the whole cowboy up thing. It was very loosey-goosey. Kevin Millar,
I love it.
Pedro, just fun. Johnny Damon, just eccentric group of guys. The Celtics team is not that. The Celtics team, it's like they just seem to get either disinterested, which some people think, or tight, which is what I kind of think, is that they just haven't figured out how to consistently win yet. So they get nervous, they get tight, and they just fumble away these games that they should be winning. So I think there are differences between those two teams, and this one does, though, manage to focus in better when they really need to, most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think we look forward to this game tonight. I mean, I expect the Celtics to win. Look, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they lose just because these playoffs have been so crazy. The Celtics have been so up and down. But I do think, I mean, the Miami Heat are a team that seems to, dare I say, get better when they lose someone, right? I mean, when they lose Tyler
this is
Hero.
tough, though. Now you're pushing those limits, right?
It is, because they don't have a lot of depth at that position, period.
So the Celtics in the last game did a better job on Caleb Martin. Max Strus was a non-factor.
Right.
I worry about Duncan Robinson's probably going to see the floor a little bit more.
A lot.
He's a vet. If he gets hot, look out. He can string together 4 or 5 3-pointers in a quarter, and then next thing you know, the Heat make a little run. But for me, the Vincent injury, if anything, takes a little pressure off the Heat.
Right.
No one's expecting them to win this game, but I think that for Jimmy Butler, for Bam Adebayo, those two guys are going to have to carry this team tonight, and they're capable of it. Will they do it? I would say I agree with you. Probably not, but would it surprise me if they did? No, because it's the Celtics at home.
Well, let's be real. I mean, the Miami Heat are kind of playing with house money right now anyway, just for the simple fact. I mean, here's why I'm going to say that. Because
about that.
we didn't know. No one really expected. When these playoffs started, no one thought the Heat would be playing in the conference finals right now.
Forget about all that.
Of course they're here now. Of course they're here.
The Florida Panthers playing with house money. I mean, I think that the teams themselves, everybody respects the Miami Heat as a good team. So
traditionally,
they did not have a great Traditionally, they know you have a great coach. You have one of the great all-time playoff performers in Jimmy Butler. You have some pretty decent talent on that team, even though a lot of them are undrafted. But when you get up 3-0 in the Eastern Conference, finals,
that's the thing.
That house money's gone.
Right. Yeah.
If it had been back and forth, 2-2, 3-2, 3-3, Game 7, then you could be like, okay, nobody expected the Heat to be here. I would say, if Game 6 and Game 7 happen, people are going to say nobody expected the Heat to be here, but for the reason that they had a 3-0 lead. Why are they here playing a Game 6 and a Game 7?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say they're kind of a victim of their own success, right?
Exactly.
Just because they won the first series when they weren't supposed to, and then they beat the Knicks, and now they're up against the Celtics. They get up 3-0. So I think the expectation is, no one's ever blown a 3-0 lead before. So I'm sure the expectation now is that they'll go ahead and find a way to win one of these last 3. Yeah. But I guess
last thing I'll say about this game, because then we'll get on to some of the other topics from my end anyway. I really hope the Celtics mindset is possession to possession.
Yeah.
Just think about the next possession. Don't think about coming back, because it's got to be that. Then you win the game. Then the next game it's possession to possession. Then you find out you won. All right. Then when Game 7 happens, Game 7 happens. But you can't start thinking about Game 7 and Game 5, and you'll forget about the whole process of getting there, and you'll end up losing on your home court.
And one thing that's on my mind is, as I was watching the Celtics the other day, they seem so much better when they're just not settling. When you see Tatum, you see Brown, they're just so gifted offensively. Yeah. It seems like they can get to the bucket and get what they want whenever they want to. Yeah. It just seems like when they fall into those lulls, they seem to fall in love with the three-point shot, with the outside shot. But Tatum, when you look at his ability especially the other night when there was a sense of urgency there, he can get to the bucket and finish whenever he wants to. Jaylen Brown is so gifted, he can do the same. So I just don't know.
Yeah.
I don't understand why sometimes offensively they kind of settle. You
Well,
know?
a couple positives I think that came out of the last game. Jason Tatum, I thought, played an incredible game.
Absolutely.
I mean, he was dialed in defensively, offensively throughout the entire game. And Marcus Smart also, I thought, played pretty well. I mean, it's not always going to show up in the stat sheet, but his decision making for the most part, I thought was very good. Made some big threes when they needed him, and Jaylen Brown actually passed the ball a lot more than he normally does, which means it finally got through to him, which I'm sure he's been told throughout the series is they're trying to make you a playmaker.
Right.
Like they're trying to, and he was just settling for some very difficult pull-up jumpers and stuff. So he said he finally clicked that he needs to pass the ball a little bit. So that should actually open up parts of his offensive game once there's at least the threat that he may pass the ball to a wide open guy underneath the basket.
True. So let's look. We got some more NBA here.
Onward,
So
yeah.
Trae Young has been obviously, he was kind of the talk, at least around here of the season. So the Los Angeles Lakers, who were bounced, and I mean bounced out the playoffs a few days ago by the Denver Nuggets, got swept 4-0.
Yep.
So we know every offseason, and I kind of get tired of this myself, every offseason, every big-name player who may even think
Lakers, yeah.
may be a part of the NBA trade wars in the offseason or free agency. Everyone's rumored to be going to the Lakers.
Well,
So next up is Trae Young, right?
Right. So they do it, though, Scott, because they did it with Shaq. They did it with Anthony Davis. They did it with LeBron. So this is what the Lakers do. They get these guys. So talk to me about Trae Young to the Lakers. What do you think?
So Trae, so obviously CBS and the Athletic reports that the Lakers have had internal discussions about pursuing a trade for Trae Young this offseason. I guess they look at Trae Young's situation here with the Hawks. They see a situation where, things really haven't been on a good path the last 2 years. So they've had internal discussions about trading for Trae Young. So I guess the thing I would really wonder, number one, obviously they've got to figure out LeBron James' status, right? I mean, I think we all expect that he'll be back and play next year, but, who knows? He hasn't made that final decision yet. He says he's going to take some weeks off, get his body right, work out a little bit, see where that stands. But when you think about the Lakers, I mean, to me, even if you put Trae Young on that team right now, just with what they have, not even considering that they'll trade anyone for him, I still don't know if you beat the Denver Nuggets, honestly. I mean, how many times do we have to see personnel-wise, how many times do we have to see these big three stacked teams get together and we just assume it's going to all flow smoothly and it's going to all come together, and half the time it doesn't.
I agree with that in that the Nuggets played a great series. So if you replay each one of those games, sure. But if the Nuggets aren't quite playing to the level that they just played at, you add Trae Young, you subtract D'Angelo Russell, and I think that the Lakers head-to-head against the Nuggets would be a toss-up, or maybe even favor the Lakers. It would probably take some pressure off of LeBron. Who knows about AD? You never know exactly what you're going to get there. But my question is, what do the Lakers have to offer?
Yeah, I mean, because
the Hawks are not just going to give him up.
No.
It's going to take a massive haul. What do they have to offer?
They don't really have a lot of key players under contract. D'Angelo Russell's a free agent. Austin Reeves is a free agent. I mean, those are probably, I would think, two of the more tradable pieces that they would have. And they're not going to trade, obviously, LeBron James and Anthony Davis. So, yeah, I think when you look at it from a trade piece standpoint, the Lakers really don't have the artillery to go get a Trae Young. So. And that's why I get so aggravated by these offseason things, because everyone just assumes that people are just going to give people to the Lakers. Yeah. They just assume that every free agent that's out there just wants to walk to go play with LeBron and AD. And I get it. It's the Lakers. It's in Los Angeles. It's one of the most storied franchises in sports history. Yeah. You have the beach. You have Venice Beach, the Pacific Ocean. I get it.
I mean, if you're the Hawks, you're going to trade Trae Young. He's a quarter. You might take 2 dimes and a nickel. Right, yeah. But you're not going to take 4 nickels and 5 pennies.
No,
you're just, and that's about at best what the Lakers could offer for Trae Young, at least as far as I know. So, I've actually seen, Scott, some talks about moving on from DeJounte Murray, and package. I saw some trade options that had DeJounte Murray and John Collins to Houston for that top pick, for the 4 pick and some other guys coming back. Yeah. Now, that would be an interesting shift, right? To very quickly be like, well, because they gave up a lot to get DeJounte Murray.
Yeah, and when you look at Houston too, they have some very interesting young pieces there. I mean, they've been
So
drafting high
they could give up a guy or two, right?
Yeah.
And also give up that number 4 pick. And if you look at it from a Houston perspective, you get a veteran in Collins, and you get a defensive guard, lockdown type of guy, still young, still in his prime, and DeJounte Murray. I think that trade looks a little more appealing from the Houston side of it than from the Atlanta side of it. Like, does Atlanta really want to put a number 4 pick now back in there? I mean, they've been down that road where they're getting top picks to go along with Trae Young, and it just hasn't worked. So
I think if you have the idea in your minds that you want to totally rebuild this team around Trae Young, if you think that the composition of the roster isn't what it needs to be, and if you want to totally just tear it down and rebuild around Trae Young, then it makes sense. But I think from a basketball standpoint, if you're sending Houston DeJounte Murray and John Collins, you're making them a lot better because they have a lot of young players on that team. They probably don't want to add too many more young players to the mix. They need some veterans. They just hired Udoka as their coach. They're looking to try to get some wins this season. So, yeah, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense from a Houston standpoint, but from not from the Hawks now.
All right.
So
baseball.
Let's talk some baseball, man. We got the Braves. Right in the middle of a homestand. They finished up last night against the Dodgers, got the win last night. Needed the win after dropping the first 2. Now the Phillies come to town for 4 straight games. And the Phillies, well, this might be a little bit of a revenge series, right?
Yeah, well, for the Braves, absolutely. And a chance to put a little separation between themselves and the Phils. The Braves aren't playing great over the last couple of weeks, so they could definitely use taking 3 or 4. Afterward, they do go West Coast, start with the Athletics, so that should be pretty. That should be some wins out there. But this big series, as big as of a series as you can have at this time of the year, coming up to Memorial Day weekend. But at the end of the year, they all count, right? So you may as well get them, especially these division games.
All 162 of them.
But they needed that one last night. They needed that win to hopefully catapult them into this series.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at kind of how they're playing right now, they're playing good enough to keep winning these games. But, yeah, I mean, a 4-game series, no matter how you slice it, a 4-game series against a divisional foe at this point in the season could loom large. I mean, I know I make jokes about there's like 10,000 games throughout the course of a season. It's 162. So, yeah, I mean, I think when you look at these series in May, I just kind of hesitate to call them big series just because the time of year it is. And everyone's roster isn't really together, right? I mean, the Braves have had some injuries and things like that. And I'm sure the Phillies aren't playing how they want to play either, especially coming off last season.
And the Phillies need to do better than a split more than the Braves do.
Yeah, I mean, they're sitting at 23 and 26.
2-2, the Braves are probably not thrilled with it, but they didn't lose any, ground. And Phillies come out of there saying we didn't gain any ground. So, should be a fun weekend of baseball at Truist. Good weather for those games as well.
I just kind of wonder, when you think about the revenge factor, right? I mean, the Phillies put it on the Braves last year in the playoffs, right? I mean, you would just think if you're a player, if you're in this situation where you're going against a team who, I mean, obviously it's not really revenge because it's regular season.
Right. I just feel like from a baseball standpoint, the season's so long.
Yeah.
This is another series. They see the Phils 19 times a year. So, this is nothing new.
Yeah.
They knew we were going to see a bunch of them. And, hopefully just start to get, consistency and take 3, because if you take 3 or 4 from the Phils, then you can roll into Oakland, possibly get a sweep there, and next thing you know, you're 6 or 7 and you're moving again. So, all right, that's baseball.
All right, so let's get into some more. Everyone around here loves Stetson Bennett, right? I mean, he seemed like he had a 14-year career over at UGA. I'm sorry, I'm just joking. He was like 25.
No, it was only 7.
He's only 7 years. So Stetson Bennett, we think from what we've seen, has to be one of the most celebrated college football careers maybe ever, right? So ESPN, they come up with this list, right up there. They come up with their list of the top 75 quarterbacks since the year 2000.
College
quarterbacks.
College careers.
Not
what they did in the pros.
Yeah. Careers, college quarterbacks, college careers since 2000. They put Stetson Bennett at number 37.
37.
Now there were 2 other UGA quarterbacks on that list. They had Aaron Murray on the list, and they had David Green. Yeah, I think he was somewhere on that list. But anyway,
Stafford's not, by the way.
Stafford wasn't. But he was before too. But no, he was. He was 2009, right? Yeah.
Just too many picks, I guess. 33 picks or whatever he threw in college. But
this is kind of crazy, though. So when you consider what Stetson Bennett accomplished at UGA, 2 national championships, the quarterback there, even though I don't think he was necessarily the dominant piece of those championship teams, doesn't it seem kind of low to have him at number 37?
Yeah, and that's the reason that you create these lists. So you create these lists to make people like you and me talk about them, or potentially subscribe to whatever the ESPN Insider or whatever it is, to read the full list because they kick it off right off the bat. All right, so you may say 37. Let me just give you the top few here. Number 1, they have Baker Mayfield.
That's questionable.
Very.
I like Baker Mayfield, and I know that's questionable.
When you look at some of the other names in the top 5, you'll find it even more questionable. Number 2, Cam Newton. I mean, Cam's like one of the most dominant college quarterbacks of all time.
He might be number 1. Yeah.
Probably, again, I did not read their reasoning. I'm going to say it's because his career was short, right. in college, so he didn't have the longevity that Baker Mayfield had in college. But give me a break. I mean, Cam was like one of the most. Number 3, Vince Young. Vince Young, when he scored that touchdown, in the Rose Bowl.
That was a great moment.
But it was against USC, whatever it was. I mean, that was one of the most impressive game seasons, careers that you've ever seen. I mean, he was just so good. Number 4, we're talking about winning. Tim Tebow.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, I think you go, wait, Baker Mayfield above those guys? And then you look at some other guys that are on the list higher than Stetson. C.J. Stroud.
Yeah, okay. So
considerably higher too, by the way. Stroud's like 15 on this list.
And sometimes I wonder when they make these sort of lists, or they think, well, I guess not so much with Baker Mayfield. As much as they say they're going by their college careers, sometimes you kind of wonder, do they kind of bump guys up because of how they were drafted? Because I like C.J. Stroud. I'm an Ohio State fan. Mm-hmm. I'm not afraid to admit it. But it's really kind of hard to say that, he didn't win any national championships at Ohio State, lost to Michigan twice, which is their rival, and he had a better college career than Stetson Bennett.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't think so.
Because before Brady played long enough to get all the records, he was widely considered to be the best NFL quarterback of all time.
For sure.
Right? So Stetson Bennett led the team to back-to-back national championships, and you're going to put him at 37 at a list that is only since the year 2000?
2000, right.
So
it's not even all time.
So that's basically saying that there's a guy and a half per year better than Stetson Bennett. Some of these other names, it's ridiculous. I mean, Phillip Rivers, I don't remember Phillip Rivers' college career, and I'm old enough to certainly remember it. I'm sure it was great statistical career.
Yeah.
Case Keenum, who could forget what Case Keenum did for the Houston Cougars?
Oh man, he threw up video game numbers every week.
That was the offense, but But they didn't win any. They didn't win anything meaningful.
Right.
So I think within what Stetson Bennett was asked to do for the Dogs, initially it wasn't that much. And then at the end, he had to do a little bit more and more. He had to win them some games. And it's a much shorter, smaller sample size, but that sounds a lot, and I'm not comparing him directly to him, but that sounds a lot like Tom Brady. Initially with the Patriots, it was like, just do, he's more of a game manager type. And then as time went on, Brady was relied on more and more to be part of the winning solution. Yeah. And I think that by the time Stetson Bennett left Georgia, teams were worried about what Stetson Bennett could do at quarterback. I think even Emily would agree with that.
Hey, man, they got Kellen Moore ahead of him at Boise State. And I remember watching Kellen Moore in college. He was pretty good, but he wasn't better than Stetson Bennett at the University of Georgia. I mean, just some of these names as I'm reading through them. I mean, Matt Leinart. Okay, I can understand Matt Leinart.
So he should be in that, at a minimum, in that realm, and Leinert's like in the teens.
Let me tell you, I heard you mention Phillip Rivers.
Yeah.
Good Phillip Rivers story. So I grew up watching Ohio State. Obviously, like I said, Ohio State fan. Phillip Rivers, it was the year after Ohio State won the 2002 national championship. That next year, they played NC State. Their quarterback was Phillip Rivers. And, man, that was my first look at Phillip Rivers. And, man, was he on the money. Yeah. Jericho Cotchery was one of his go-to receivers.
He wasn't a great
He was really good, though. He really was.
He was really good.
Yeah.
Colin Kaepernick's on this list he's 31.
I barely remember his college career.
That's what I'm
not
saying.
Gonna lie.
So that's just, whatever the, I'm going to guess a lot of that has to do with statistics. Joe
Yeah,
Burrow,
for sure.
by the way, number 5. But Joe Burrow had
Joe Burrow was ice
the
cold.
best
that
throwing
LSU.
season of any college quarterback ever.
Yeah,
without
I mean,
a doubt.
when we're
With that
talking about
LSU
single
season,
seasons, yeah.
you know, when you talk about like Cam and Vince Young may have impacted the game greater, like the games that they played in greater than Burrow did. But when it came to just strictly throwing the ball, Burrow's numbers were insane. And it wasn't even like they were playing one of those ridiculous video game type offenses.
Right.
You know, he was just so good because they did run the ball a little bit.
And here's one name that just kind of jumped out at me as being lightweight ridiculous in my mind was Carson Palmer at number 23. Now, Carson Palmer at USC, he obviously won the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah.
But Carson Palmer, up till the time he won the Heisman Trophy, was kind of seen as a disappointment at USC, statistically and everything. I mean, he was just kind of a mediocre quarterback, maybe above average quarterback, until that Heisman season. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's a little – that's one of the more ridiculous names I see. That's ahead of Stetson Bennett on that list. But I get it. I mean, I think what so many people is they're looking at Stetson Bennett's role within the offense, and they're looking at how loaded the defense was. That's kind of what everyone kind of knows Georgia
football
by.
games.
Yeah.
And there's a few guys on this list. And again, this is why they make this list.
Yeah. They make
Troy
these kind of-
Smith, Graham.
See, I'm
Harrell?
biased again. See, I'm biased with Troy Smith, but he
Troy Smith was the Ohio State quarterback?
Yeah, he was.
Okay. Who did Graham Harrell play for?
Graham Harrell was at Texas Tech as well. He was in that same air raid offense that pretty much every quarterback that
So
played
it's-
in that
it's
offense put
pretty
up big
much
numbers.
heavily statistically
Yeah,
weighted.
absolutely.
Right.
So
Mahomes is lower than Stetson.
they got Johnny
Matt,
Football
Matt
on the list
Ryan
at
comes
13.
in at number 75 on this list.
Okay, I can.
I
didn't follow Matt Ryan at Boston College
He was
a whole
very
lot.
good
Okay.
for what he had there. He was very good, and that's why he was drafted so high. Obviously,
They got my guy Johnny Manziel on this list. You know what? Being a Cleveland Browns fan, I see a lot of Cleveland Brown quarterbacks that end up being bust on this list. So what's real quick here? They're giving us the wrap. What's on your mind?
Well, the Celtics obviously tonight, but how about the Florida Panthers? I mean, they are having an unreal run. They had scored the game-winning goal with 5 seconds left to sweep away the Hurricanes. And the only other thing that's on my mind is Block, the PGA Tour pro, who is now parlaying his PGA Championship into a few other paydays. So good for him.
That's pretty dope. Quickly, what's on my mind? I was out at OTAs this week with the Falcons. Their new league defense isn't, I think they're going to surprise some teams for not just what they can do on the offensive side of the ball, but what they can do on defense. Adding Calais Campbell, adding Jesse Bates back there as safety.
Bates is great.
Jeff Okudah has a kind of a fresh start on his career.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't have the best career in Detroit as a top 3 draft pick, but
it
I
wasn't
think Carolina exactly wasn't terrible, and I think he's going to get kind of like a new lease on life. And I would say watch out for the Falcons defense. I think they're going to surprise some people.
Yeah, top half of the league, probably.
Exactly.
Should
Cool.
be.
That's
All right.
Sports Tonight on a Thursday. Always good to have you through here, Fred, to talk some basketball and other sports. I appreciate it.
Coming back tomorrow. I'll either be smiling or I'll be a little bit sad.
Exactly. Go Celtics, I guess.
Yeah.